Okay, so that being said, let's get into some of my thoughts for 2025, maybe some of the storylines that are going to emerge from the year. Definitely, let's start with Ferrari. Charles versus Lewis is going to be, everybody's going to be paying attention to that. One thing that Charles said recently that I thought was great is that they both have very similar driving styles. So they both will need, the same thing moving forward. The car will develop basically for both of them simultaneously because they, require the same things. And I thought that was great because it's like we really will get to see kind of a true head-to-head. The car essentially is adapted for both of them. And we'll really get to see, a competition between them where it's not like, oh, well, this car, is more so catered to this driving style. So the other driver is struggling. And so, like we actually will get to see two drivers with similar styles drive a car that's suited for both of them. So there's that. Obviously people are looking at Charles for, having a, better head-to-head record against Lewis in terms of qualifying. And honestly, I mean, that might be true, but looking at the head-to-head between like Carlos Sainz and Charles is interesting because like when you kind of look in the data, Carlos wasn't that far behind Charles, maybe like 0.2 sometimes, a tenth maybe. So, and I think, I can't remember the exact head-to-head, but it's like 20 something races to a handful of races going to Carlos's way. So if Carlos could keep up, then I think Lewis can keep up. And if he keeps up this season, at the very least, I am happy with that. Like I'm not expecting him to go out there and, immediately be top of the charts in every single race, win every single, like that's not, I don't think that's realistic. I think, at the end of the day, Charles is going to be more comfortable in the team than Lewis is. He doesn't have to, spend this year getting to know new things and getting to know new people. Like he pretty much can just plug and play. So I do think that's like an advantage in his favor. And Charles is, I feel like, really fast. And yeah, all credit to him. Like he's a great qualifier. So I don't like, if Lewis can keep up, I'll be happy. I'm not really interested in the head-to-head anyway. What I'm interested, or quality head-to-head, race head-to-head is more so where it's at. I do think that's kind of advantaged Lewis. He has just a much more consistent driving style. He can do a better job of, nurturing his tires. Although like Charles is good at that too. Like it really will depend also on the car, like how it does on tire degradation. So I don't know, it might just be really close, but I'm not one way or the other. Like, I'm just like, as long as Lewis is hanging in there, I'm happy. But this show, I'm not just going to be like, I'm not going to be, I'm going to say like, if the car is good, if Lewis is confident, I'm going to put his name in the hat for WTC. Like, I'm not going to be one of those people who is like, I don't see it happening. I see it happening. Again, it's mental. He's telling us pre-season, before he's ever actually physically driven the new Ferrari, he's literally saying, yeah, me and Charles are the strongest driver pairing. Max Verstappen is beatable. I'm feeling good. This man threatened to not retire until he's 50. Like, he must be feeling good for some reason. Something has given him some indication that things are going to go all right. So from that perspective, and he's hungry, he's saying it. He's like, I can't tell you how bad I want to win. And I don't have anything else to live for. He said, I don't have a wife, I don't have kids. He's like, all I got is a bulldog, babe. Like, I'm free. I can do it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can spend my time just straight up in the sim, if I wanted to. So I think that's going to go really far. And I do think it's short-sighted to exclude Lewis off of these lists, even if it's just like potential, potentially could win. So yeah, this is my channel. I'm going to say that's my top pick. If everything it continues the way that it looks, that's my top pick. And I wouldn't be mad if it was Charles. Because, I think Ferrari is just like they have so much motion. Everybody and everything on that team is just like so like forward moving, progressing. Maybe that's what I'm looking for. So yeah, I wouldn't be mad if it was Charles, and I would be, happy for him. But um, yeah, I'm putting my money behind Lewis, and I am also going to put my money behind Ferrari winning constructor, because again, they won that shit last year, or excuse me, they were almost close to winning it last year with Charles and Carlos in the car, kind of having that lapse in performance, kind of like partway through the season. So even with all of that, like they still were able to almost catch up to McLaren. So yeah, if the car stays pretty consistent throughout the year, then I think we have a much tighter title fight between McLaren and Ferrari, if that's what it comes down to again. And I do think it will. I think Ferrari is going to walk away with one or both of those titles. And yeah, that's my I guess maybe bold prediction for the year. I don't know. Let's see, Red Bull. Well, the downfall that I prayed for seems like it's out for delivery. I don't know. I really don't know what to make of the car. Again, a lot of variable conditions. They were testing a lot of stuff. Max tested stuff that Liam didn't test. Liam didn't look super comfortable in the car. Like, there was a lot going on. It was a lot going on, I will say. But mainly I would look at Red Bull in terms of maybe like the personnel side of things. Like, I know Max is Max, right? So like if Max has a car that's capable of winning, or even getting close, he'll do it. Like he won last year, I feel like, on damage limitation, basically. So yeah, he's definitely not out of it, but I think more so it's going to be the variable. Like he has a new teammate. Liam Lawson, to me, does not come across as somebody who is like timid and shy. Like you can tell he's ready for his moment in the sun. So that'll be interesting to see how he kind of adapts to a teammate who may not really, adhere, let's say, to team orders all of the time, or, really accept being second in the pecking order. I think he's thinking like, this is my shot, and we already know how Red Bull gets down. They're quick to get you out of there. So if he doesn't perform right away, I don't see an incentive for them to keep him around the way that they kind of kept Checo around for too long. But yeah, that'll be interesting to see. And then really like the team management side, right? So like in 2022, 2023, the team was a well-oiled machine. Pit stops were great. Strategy was great. Verstappen was doing a good job driving. Like everything just kind of like was flowing. And then everything happened with Horner, and then, Newey's leaving, Wheatley's leaving, lots of personnel shakeups at Red Bull. It'll just be interesting to see, like, how they recover, or how, maybe they don't this season. So I think a lot of the performance side is going to rely on that. And that's what I'll say about Red Bull. The other downfall that I have ordered for express shipping is Mercedes. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like that should be self-explanatory at this point. But Toto Wolff, man, I haven't shit on him at all this episode. Maybe I'll save it for later in the season. But I just feel like I need him to get his just desserts. George Russell, same thing. Like I don't really care about them. Now, little Kimi, I do feel bad that he's going to be collateral damage in this fantasy of mine. But that team does not deserve nice things right now. I'm sorry. Like they do deserve to go through a period of suffering on their own. You hear in the commentary, like, Mercedes will be keen to see if they can prove that they can win without Lewis. They don't deserve to win without Lewis. Not right now. Sit in the corner. You know what I'm saying? Like, zip it, sit in the corner, don't say shit. Like, let them stew in this for a minute. Like this boneheaded, stupid decision to release Lewis Hamilton to your number one competitor. Like, for what? For what? I mean, and Kimi, bless him, and this whole concept, right, of Mercedes moving towards the future makes sense. Like nothing they're saying doesn't make sense. It's just the way that they went about it that is just baffling, right? Like, if anything, a better teammate for Kimi would have been Lewis, right? He's the more mature driver. He's the more experienced driver. He's been where Kimi has, been. He's going to be a little bit more of a guidance for him. And obviously, Lewis is still competitive. But I think it's like putting him with George just doesn't make sense. George himself is still trying to figure out his footing as a driver. He's improved somewhat in some areas, but in other areas, like I do feel like he still has a long way to go. And I think he focuses on the wrong things, George. So, this season is going to be interesting between Kimi and George. I do think they're both going to be really fast over one lap. But I think a lot of these guys are really fast over one lap. But the race pace is where I see so many of them like fall off. They eat these tires. And these tires are already like wonky on their own. That was a huge like storyline from last season. And I think they're changing a slight bit for this season as well. So that's another variable for, the driving. We'll see how everybody kind of handles these new tires. But yeah, I just feel like, I can't judge Kimi too much. If he does really well this season, then yes, he's a prodigy. Hats off. And if he doesn't do well, then Toto Wolff needs his ass kicked because, I feel like he stunted Kimi's ability to develop in the lower series the way that some of the other rookies have gotten a chance to do. And I do feel like that's important. Like, I know he fixates on finding the next Max, but like even Max drove in the lower series. And then when he came into F1, he drove for like the lower tier sister team. Like he wasn't immediately thrust into Red Bull, right? And like where he immediately is, filling the shoes of like somebody like Lewis Hamilton. Like that didn't happen to Max. So even if Kimi has this like raw talent and this raw speed, and I don't doubt it, and he does seem really like comfortable in some ways, which is really good. That he's like adjusting really well. But yeah, I think every driver deserves to develop their craft before you throw them in the ocean and tell them to swim. I do think that there is something to be said for getting to develop as a driver first, and getting an opportunity to crash and, have lows and, kind of work your way out of them, like without so many people paying attention to you. But the minute that Toto made it abundantly clear that we were going to get Kimi, I just really feel like he put too big of a spotlight on him. So I do hope things work out for Kimi because he's really young and like, it's a big thing. It's a tall order for him. So, but like I said, the game is the game. And I need a pound of flesh from Mercedes. So if this is their worst season ever, then I won. McLaren, let's see. So I, talk about the cars that it's strong, which I do feel like will be good for them because of, the prior season where, they were kind of like working out the kinks a little bit and then the car sort of like hit its stride. And they kind of lament the fact that like, if we were able to fight from the beginning, things might look different for Lando. I disagree with that because even though he lost those first few races, like there was opportunities later in the season to still win. So the points could have still been made up at any juncture from Lando, but he just did not have that dog in him. And like I said, Max was in a very like wounded kind of Red Bull for a large majority of the season. Like there was a point where he wasn't even getting podiums. Do you know what I'm like? We weren't hearing the Dutch national anthem. And I was like, wow, like nature is healing. But you know what I mean? Like the fact that Max was able to win the championship still, in spite of all of that stuff happening to his car and to the team. I'm like, Lando, that was his opportunity. And I feel like this year, if the cars all start closer together, it's going to be even harder for him because, you don't just have Max, you now have Charles, you have Lewis, you have Oscar, who I'm sure is going to be chomping at the bit, right, to kind of like get his name in the hat for WDC as well. So I feel like you have so many more people who are you going to be in competition with to start the season. So yeah, even if the car is good, we'll see what happens. Because the main thing I think for Lando this year, just like last year, is going to be his mentality. I'm curious to see how that experience changed him. Um, and really like how he applies it under pressure, because I do think it's like one thing to feel confident, but obviously it's going to be a whole other thing when you're like in a race situation. We saw like, Silverstone last year, for example, overshooting his mark during the pit stop, and that costs a bit of time. And just enough time for Lewis to overtake him for the lead of the race. So it's like stuff like that, like the little mistakes that happen under pressure. Can we overcome them? I don't know. But yeah, with that being said, I think Oscar kind of suffers from maybe something similar. Like the end of last season was a little bit flat for him. It wasn't where I was expecting him to be given the, momentum he had throughout the season. And I don't necessarily think that he was like bummed out that, everybody had to kind of back Lando, but maybe like the length of the season for him, like because McLaren was still in the running for the constructor, like, you couldn't let up at any point. So maybe it was just like end of his second ever season in F1 and, just maybe a little tired. I don't know. But it did feel a little bit strange that he had a little bit more juice at the beginning of the year. And at the end of the year, it was like, can the real Oscar Piastri please stand up? Because this is not who we're used to seeing drive these cars. So that's what I'll say for McLaren. I'll be interested to see if they're ready really for their moment in the sun. Because I think last year did kind of catch them off guard a little bit. And then they were like, oh shit, we could potentially win both of these championships. And then they were like, well, maybe we'll just focus on the constructor. Well, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they can just pull it all together, because it seems like they have the car. So it's really just going to come down to the mental stuff. And I do think there's stronger mental opponents on the track that even with lesser equipment can do a little bit more. So have to be careful with that. Let's see what else. We have, oh my God, a gaggle of rookies. Kimi, I just talked about. Ollie Behrman will be back full-time. He was a full-time reserve driver last year. But this year we'll see him actually, at Haas with Esti Besti, Jack at Alpine, Isaac with V-Carb, and Gabriel over at Stake. Yeah, I mean, I wish I had more insight into these guys, like their prior careers, but I don't. So I will be watching like everybody else to kind of see, how they shake out, how they do. I mean, honestly, in the past like couple of seasons, the rookies have been very surprising. The ones who have come in. I mean, there's been a couple of outliers, but it seems like everybody who has had their shot has done really decent, which is very surprising. Because F1's a big sport, and again, a lot of eyes. I think Alex Albon talked about this in one of his interviews at Bahrain testing, where he kind of talked about how like he felt like or feels like driving is the easy part, but it's all of like the noise around F1, like the actual literal, crowd noise, the marketing stuff. Like he feels like that's harder to kind of handle than the actual driving itself. So if that's true for some of the rookies, I think that might be what kind of, they all have to kind of get acclimated to. But yeah, I think once they can all focus and just turn their full attention to driving, I hope that we'll see the similar trend of, they all do relatively well for their teams. Then we have Sainz versus Albon. Speaking of Albon, at Williams. Yeah, I think Sainz is going to bring a lot of experience to the team, which is much needed. Like most of these teams, Williams is in a new kind of regrowth period, making a lot of changes operationally and just trying to get back to their former glory, right? So I think Carlos Sainz was a really good addition to the team. I don't think that they think they'll be fighting for much more than like, I think Carlos said like maybe we'll be in the top 10, maybe. But, probably not podiums, not race wins or anything like that. Alex has had some really decent results in the Williams throughout the years. Last year was a little bit weird, but, there's so many different factors and there's a lot going on at Williams. So I do think it'll be a few years of like, that awkward growth phase. But I do think somebody like Carlos is a good addition because, he will have that experience of being at Ferrari and how they do things. And, he obviously is his own person and has his own ideas of how to do things. So yeah, it'll be kind of interesting to see like kind of where that lands. But Alex, obviously, this is like his first time not having a rookie teammate in a while. So yeah, we'll see how he kind of like stacks up because so far he's really been the hero and the stability of the team. But maybe Sainz will come in and change that. I guess we'll see. I don't really have anything for Hulk. Steak is steak. Steak is going to be in the back. I think they're probably going to be 14th out of 10 this season, probably. I don't really think they're planning on investing that much in the car. Yeah, so whatever. We have SD Bestie at Haas. I just talked about Ollie, his younger rookie teammate. So that'll be fun to see kind of the dynamic between them. Haas, again, another team kind of in that rebuilding phase. They're getting a bit more momentum. They had some good like qualifying results, race results last year as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see like where that midfield, backfield kind of like ends up because there are teams back there that have been making some really good progress, even though they're not like anywhere near the front. They for where they're at, they have been making progress. So that will be interesting to see how it plays out. And then we just have Aston Martin. Thank you so much for tuning into Super Soft Radio. If you enjoyed that segment, you can find the full episode in my full episode playlist. And if you enjoyed this, please be sure to subscribe to my channel. I would love to have you around for future uploads and be part of the community. So thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.